Hello friends, and welcome back to Nightmind. This time I have one of the most appropriate offerings to bring on a channel like this. But before we even get into it, I'd like to give some credit and thanks to fellow YouTuber MrMattyPlays, who brought the mystery of Tender to my attention on his channel first with an exploration video a while back. Matty also brought up the big reveal regarding Tender just days before its official confirmation at Game Developers Conference 2019 in San Francisco. It was all in ARG for the reveal of Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, the sequel to an underground hit fans have wanted for over a decade. Mr. Matty is huge on RPG titles from Bethesda releases to BioWare, Star Wars titles, and the upcoming Cyberpunk 2077. If you want to keep up to date on info regarding Bloodlines 2 and titles in the same vein, Matty's your guy. I'll have a link to his channel in the video description below. First, a bit of background because this really is like a vampire waking up from a dirt nap. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines was a modern vampire role-playing game released in 2004, and it had everything it needed to become a mainstream success. If it hadn't been going up against Half-Life 2, Halo 2, and Metal Gear Solid 3 all at the same time. The market competition was far too strong, resulting in Bloodlines selling less than 100,000 copies in its launch window. Critically acclaimed as it was by reviewers, good word of mouth could not save the title, and it fell into obscurity outside a collective of cult classic fans. The studio that developed the game folded soon after, ensuring there would never be a sequel. Vampire the Masquerade as an intellectual property stems from a tabletop role-playing game owned by White Wolf Publishing, who developed a full realm of gothic and horror fantasy titles under their World of Darkness line. Nothing could be done with video game rights for Vampire the Masquerade for years, as the company CCP Games bought the license to the full World of Darkness catalog to work on an MMO. That, however, didn't come to fruition, so they sold the rights to White Wolf Properties in 2015 to Paradox Interactive, as well as all their assets from the cancelled MMO. Everything that had been in development for video games in the World of Darkness line was swept up by Paradox, who got to work immediately, resulting in Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. Fans of the original have nothing to fear, as the head writer behind Bloodlines, Brian Mitsoda, reprised his role to bring a full-powered vision of Bloodlines to life on modern consoles. They've created world-building videos on the website just to introduce the groups you'll meet in Vampire Society on top of launching a complex ARG for the title. Their excitement is clear. So what about that ARG? Exactly what kind of experience did Paradox Interactive set up, and how does it bleed into Vampire the Masquerade? You'll want to steel yourself for a lot of step-by-step movements here. Professional ARGs can be complicated and multifaceted for sure, but this one really went for an extensive experience, and even I'm surprised how involved it got. We cover a lot of material that consists of storyline weaving components on YouTube and Twitter, streamlining a narrative much like a TV show or novel. But this will be the first time we get to dissect something that's got a really hands-on by-the-minute game narrative with a full plan and finale plotted. If you've ever been curious how this kind of experience runs, Tender will be your first taste of the fast-track mainstream realm of immersive online storytelling. On January 3rd, a new Twitter account was made titled NoxJ 2019, launching with a statement, "2019 is here. I am reborn from the Phoenix dumpster fire of 2018. I'm a new me. I'm Nox. This is my life, ending 140 characters at a time." Nox then discovers we've been upgraded by double that amount of characters, which is a pretty clever way of showing they've been on Twitter before, but have stayed away long enough to miss that update. On January 7th, Nox informs us of their location, San Francisco. They vow to fall hard from their new height via sin and debauchery to press some mortal flesh in the streets below. We follow the Nox Odyssey as they hit Origin nightclub, take a drink out of a shoe, nurse a hangover, and then travel to Stockholm. Then we see interaction in the form of a reply to World of Keralis. "The weirdo says hi, and can't wait to see you. P.S. Tender is lit by the way, you'll see." The tweet Nox is replying to comes from Keralis, a Let's Player on YouTube who said, "Thank you for the fantastic support on City Skylines. We will resume in a few days. Now I am off to meet my good friend NoxJ 2019. That weird website I mentioned in the video yesterday which he wants me to sign up on is tenderbeta.com. What a weirdo, eh? Hashtag Nox Odyssey." Every game needs a public vector of some kind in order to open a wide door to the experience, which serves as the best form of trailhead. For many Tender followers, this tweet and the video reference would have been the main access point, with Nox serving as a natural character plant. Turns out this is episode 1, season 4 of Keralis' City Skylines uploads. Going through the video, the first odd moment you'll catch comes in at 2 minutes 2 seconds, showing a pink mist with a code flying by. Corrales then speaks about how he'd like to make this a series, which would require making a few videos over the coming week. However, his good American friend Knox is coming to Sweden that weekend, and he would love to hang out, even though Knox could play a role in a Hollywood movie about partying excess. He keeps going on about some weird website that he wants me to sign up on, Corrales says. I would be the first batch in, so if you don't see me over the coming days, I'll just be out partying with Knox, I guess. So here we have the hint, the connection, and a code, all bringing us back to the Twitter post showing that it's Tender, and this is the Knox we need to follow. The code turns out to be a pastebin link with a very simple yet ominous message. Phase 1 initiated. Anyone taking a look at Tender's website from this point can see the pink smoke behind the code as part of their theme, so we know it's been included on their behalf. Head back over to Knox's account and you'll find he's more hooked up to people than expected of someone just returning to Twitter. He replies to Zach at Hyper RPG Studio, who tells him he's not going to sign up for Tender and incur his wife's wrath, but he should enjoy Stockholm. Zach is CCO of a Twitch studio and former showrunner for Geek and Sundry. Particularly funny about this is catching his retweet of a Variety article about how streamers expand interactive storytelling in a post-Bandersnatch world, which is coming long after the close of the Tender ARG, but just in time for our investigation video right now. Go figure, eh? This kind of behavior continues, including, wow, really? Angry Joe? They got Angry Joe for this? Just how many big video creators does Knox know? Anyhow, Knox continues spreading his influence for Tender as we see in a follow-up conversation between him and Corrales. That makes 3 outlets so far we can find Knox, setting players up for their main lead, who leaves Stockholm and arrives in LA before kicking off the true Phase 1 in this game. Guys, someone on Tender just shared me the weirdest website. You thought Tender was weird? Well, it's nothing compared to that, but damn, it's worth it. I've been told I can share it with you guys, but you must pass a certain test to see if you've got what it takes to handle the truth. What follows is a series of code puzzles tweeted out that Knox arranges in a single image, teasing the end result. 3 words. Puzzle work for the community involve figuring out constellations, using star numbers from those constellations on a pastebin link, solving numeric sequences, a backwards tweet, and hex color codes, all culminating in the phrase, "Trust no more." Knox confirms the solve. TrustNoMore.com, a site dedicated to blowing the lid on secret societies and the paranormal. The most fervent writer on the site is named Manchuria, who began posting about Tender on January 18th. Their first and most important impression is the one repeated twice. Tender is dangerous. We recently uncovered a cache of data under the label Project Chimera. We do not know what that is yet. The folder contains vast amounts of files and information. Each piece seems unconnected, even random. The only connecting thread is the current CEO of Tender, Malcolm Chandler. Somehow, all these disparate pieces come together into something whole for Chandler. He has a plan. I fear what it might be. Manchuria follows up on January 26 with an article titled Tender, Paranoia Rising. Another week and more digging into the rabbit hole that is Tender and Project Chimera. As of writing this article, over 219,000 people have already signed up for the new dating app. A contact gave me a leaked employee memo that says Tender will give access to its platform as early as February. Things are getting scary. My phone keeps ringing unknown number, and when I answer, there is no reply. I've stopped answering. I get the sense I'm being followed in the streets. Last night, there was someone standing across the street just staring up into my apartment window. A few contacts have failed to reply to my messages the last few days, and I'm worried. So I need your help, Hivemind. I've designed an algorithm that can decipher the Project Chimera file system, but it's slow going. I did access another partial image. What is it? What does it have to do with Malcolm Chandler, Tender, and Project Chimera? The image mentioned, like one attached in the previous article, is concept art for locations in Bloodlines 2, a clever way to tease players about the true nature of the ARG. Around the time these articles appeared, Knox kept playing around on Twitter, interacting with new followers while also sending messages to his friends on the site with prominent names. He even roped Angry Joe into it after all. Knox mentions on January 22nd that something will be coming up on Saturday and he won't be available because he's taking a flight to Houston. Replying to a follower reveals he doesn't know what Saturday is about. That lady from Tender told me she'll send me new stuff. Sure enough, the message arrives with a link and email address to contact when Knox gets it all figured out. The link led to a coded message solved using base 85, saying, "Everything is connected. The main connection is the answer." Emailing this to the address provided gave this reply. "If you're reading this, well, nice try, but that's not it. She needs people who can deal with things, heavier things than these puzzles. Come on, next time you contact me, you better have the right answer. 1969-41-1. I imagine this was a tough one for players to solve at the onset. There aren't many places to use that code. However, trying the search bar on Trust No More directed them to an article titled Error. This held 3 articles on the site about non-tender subjects which had strike-through text with riddles. Fear and dread are my children. I am close to you, but how close am I from the soul? Fear and dread were apparently Phobos and Deimos, the children of Aphrodite and Ares. Sol was just Latin for sun, and because Ares was the Greek counterpart to the god Mars, that was the planet being hinted at, the 4th from the sun. I am composed of 5.9% red, 32.2% green, and 72.9% blue. You can find me between the 5th and 6th knuckle. The color was decided to be sapphire, and the position between the 5th and 6th knuckle stands for the month of September and lesser-known memorization methods taught using hands. Sapphire is September's birthstone, verifying the answer. The final piece was an image with a number hidden inside, cut in half, but still possible to read. 1781. The 4th of September 1781 was the date Los Angeles was founded. Sending this answer to the email address got a reply. Los Angeles? Yes, that's it. That's what she told me. Here, you might have more info on what she's going on about. The numbers listed were identified as a Fibonacci sequence, but interrupted by 213, 266, and 7737. It turned out to be a Los Angeles area code phone number with a recorded message that played after calling. Hello there, Knox. I see you've made your way through the puzzles. Well done. You have proven trustworthy enough to meet in person next weekend. We have some business to discuss at that time. You better be serious about this. Knox kept touch with players during his flight. He replied, She wants to meet with me? I won't be able to make it if it's next weekend. Are any of you available to go for me? Pretty pleased with a cherry on top. Players did say they don't exactly have a location for the meeting, and Knox assured them he'd try to get one. And technically he did, but the result wasn't very good. You'll have to search a bit by yourself to get the exact location, Betrayed Mind said. It's not that difficult, something you're already aware of. Why don't you make it easy? Because I don't want anybody finding out about this. Find the exact location. I'll send one of my men to meet you there at 11 a.m. Players now had to review everything collected so far to see what they might have missed. Turns out nothing was missing. An element had been updated. Calling the LA phone number resulted in recording playback for someone driving under instruction from a GPS. Tracking the path of instructions on a map as well as one small clue from Betrayed Mind pointed to the Griffith Observatory. Knox sent a message to confirm and was happy to share the answer was correct. Now he just needed players to go there and see what the deal was. Knox's field agents met with contacts from the Tender spy on the appointed day and were handed a locked briefcase. The contacts said, "Trust no more," and then left. That same hour, the Trust No More site updated with a page containing codes. 6 lines corresponding to the 6 digits needed to unlock the briefcase. Now, if you think the previous codes were a bit much to go through, you would really not want to be in players' positions for this part. In the end, they needed 2 more clues for the solve. The first half of each line was a set of coordinates. The third number was the year a prominent person in that location died, and it was someone who had a planet named after them. The planet would have its own number code, which is where the final bit of information comes in. The digit out of the 4 numbers in the planet code for that person was the one to focus on. But players also needed to put the lines in order according to death year. This finally resulted in 407878 unlocking the briefcase, which contained a censored internal memo from Tender, a page of symbols, a report on experiments, a book of blood types, sunglasses, a notebook, a tag for a page on Trust No More that needed a keyword to be reached, and Grandma's pancake recipe. Alright. You'd think after the pains of cracking the briefcase, jumping through hoops with secret codes would let up just a bit, but no. Grandma's recipe included capital letters that made up the URL for the secret Tender page, which needed a password. The password, whistleblower, was written on the page of symbols, which were in a language known as Moon type. The password-protected page provided a new piece of concept art, while the Tender memo was part of a discussion between Chief Tech Officer Joe Preston and CEO Malcolm Chandler, mentioning the program being run inside of Tender, the Regent. Invisible to all users except elite clients, the Regent is capable of providing the elite clients with biometric readings on other users, as well as an option that we're not allowed to see. Preston ends his memo saying, "Semper Servis," a Latin phrase meaning, "always your servants." The next phase of the game began on February 5th, with Tender allowing the curious to join its beta phase. They issued unique beta tester codes to those who had previously tried to apply, but really, for the game, players needed to collect public reveals of codes. 4 of them. Code 1 came from a tweet by Nox. Code 2 came from an email sent to only one player. Code 3 was discovered on a Trust No More article by Manchuria, and Code 4 was found by again calling the Los Angeles phone number. Using all 4 codes gave players access to the private beta, and sign-up at the time is the same as it is now for the open beta phase. Choose a blood type, some interests you have, the way you feel, a photo to represent yourself from only these 4 choices, and how lonely you are. A username would need to be selected from a randomized list based on your choices. If you want to get the experience of the game, you can go through Tender yourself and play along with the system, which issues quests to a user while also pushing them to look for trivia answers. Tender users later received an email with a video link welcoming them to the service. This acted as confirmation for those who had been following along that Tender was devious, but also worked as a trailhead to Trust No More for newcomers. In the video, a secret message was hidden. "This is bait," and a link was placed in the email to the Trust No More site. The game ramped up from here with its second real-world location. An article by Manchuria stated there would be an event in New York on the 23rd. They offered a survey for anyone willing to come help out on the spying effort to see what Tender was up to. Information on what would happen came in another article on February 15th. There would be 4-hour sessions during which biometric data would be monitored while using Tender. People would then be put into 2 groups and have to beat an escape room. Manchuria would select 10 trustworthy applicants to be spies for the Tender event. This turned out to be a pretty cool accidental survey of just how many people were in the game. More than 847 people filled out Manchuria's form, and while they couldn't get the full 10 they wanted for the spying effort, they did gather 8. Everyone else would be able to follow along on Twitch. The escape room event went a little bit like this. CEO Malcolm Chandler's personal assistant Matthew was running the show and greeting those who arrived. 3 people were selected to talk to one of the stream cameras about how lonely they would rate themselves and if they believed in the paranormal. In the chat, viewers would receive codes that activated new quests on the Tender site, keeping them involved in a form of gameplay as well. Matthew, Chandler's assistant, would question visitors about their personalities and feelings, taking down notes and passing out business cards on Malcolm Chandler's behalf while speaking highly of him. Those who completed the escape room discovered a USB drive, which held the complete version of the briefcase memo. This revealed there would be a new event on March 21st for 300 Tender users to attend a private party in San Francisco. Viewers who stuck around long enough also got to witness a bit of landscape footage from Bloodlines 2 accompanied by a scream and overhear a woman saying, "I knew this wasn't going to end well. I've seen it before. It's one of the reasons I got out. Man, it's really hitting me. That could have been me tonight." In February, Tender users received mystery emails that again had bits of code leading to pastebin pages, pointing towards the 16th Street mission station for San Francisco's Yellow Line transit system. Follow-up emails were official invites to the VIP launch event in San Francisco during the annual Game Developers Conference. Other than the coinciding date, the lower right-hand corner watermark was the first heavy giveaway that Tender was shaping up to unveil a major video game. A search for Paradox Interactive immediately shows off the company's work. Activity picked up in early March with the biggest deadline of the game looming. Tender users were directed to speak with Betrayed Mind 1 as one of their soulmate matches. It turned out they had been replaced with a chatbot named Angela, a plant by Manchuria, loaded with secret responses to keywords only a long-term player in the ARG would know. You could get replies to phrases like Trust No More, Tender, and names from the company. Of particular interest is this response about Tender. Tender is a dating site I helped create with Job. It uses PegML as an emotional mapping algorithm. I still think it's a good idea, but everything changed last year in September. A certain someone took over my company with Job's help. They stole it. They got the copyright to the PegML technology. Asking about Malcolm Chandler and Job also gets results. Malcolm Chandler is a venture capitalist. He has his hands in a lot of companies and schemes. To put it simply, Malcolm wanted Tender for a strategic portfolio. I don't know how he got to Job, but he ended up getting him in his corner, and together they used a shotgun clause to steal the company and my algorithm from me since it belonged to the company. This isn't the first time Malcolm's done this to anyone either. I did some digging and he's taken over lots of different companies. He's been trying to get more funding and attention from the Fraser Foundation. It would be bad enough if he were doing this just to turn a profit, but I can't shake the feeling he's got some plan in mind for the site and the algorithm. So, Betrayed Mind 1 has actually been Manchuria the entire time, and they're the developer of the algorithm that makes Tender work, PegML. It was developed with a man named Job who helped Malcolm Chandler take over the company and kick Manchuria out so they could use the algorithm as part of the Regent, Tender's special client-based service, and it seems to be in the interests of the Fraser Foundation. But what is PegML anyway? This is going to sound weird, but go with me on it. Basically, it's an algorithm that learns your habits and figures out how to connect with you on an emotional level. It learns what keeps you engaged on an emotional level and adapts to that. The colors you find uplifting, the music you find meaningful, patterns that subconsciously reassure you. There are applications to it that I think are obvious. The first effort was Tender. That explains all the talk about biometric scans. PegML understands a person on an emotional level and can track fluctuation of emotion. But since being removed from Tender, Manchuria doesn't know what it's morphed into. Updates to the Angela bot provided more info as time went on, and 1 week before the big event, details were given on its nature. You've probably heard at this point that Malcolm is planning a gathering in San Francisco soon. On March 21st, he's bringing as many people as he can together to showcase Tender and unveil its future, whatever that may be. He's making it a big spectacle too. Art installations, loud music, and all kinds of designer foods. Anyway, all of my contacts at Tender are telling me that the planning for this thing has been uncomfortably secretive. My most trusted contacts and I are putting together a small group that can get into the gathering. We're going to do our best to be there, just out of notice. When you show up, we'll find you. From there, you can work with my other allies to further infiltrate the event. Together, we can try to blend in to find out the truth, expose Tender, and put an end to this. Props about San Francisco prior to the last Angela update actually asked users to be part of the action. I want you to understand that I am taking a risk here. However, no woman is worth her salt if she is not ready at all times to risk her well-being, her body, and her life for a great cause. Yes, I know I partially quoted Teddy Roosevelt, but it fits given the current situation. Send an email to the following address: sapphothepotus609@gmail.com. Add Manchuria to your subject. Once you have the answer to the riddle, send it to me via Tender. This should be an adequate way for me to find out if I can trust you or not. The riddle was in the form of a poem, with each line referencing a historical event that occurred on March 21st, including World Poetry Day. Once this answer was sent, a phone number was provided, with lyrics to the song San Francisco's Doomed, but edited to remove the word doomed. This was the final keyword for Angela, who handed over a new email address. The reply was simply, "Thank you. You'll be contacted in a few days. Keep a low profile." While waiting for Manchuria's contact, users could pry for more information from Angela and strike gold with instructions to type in the command, load Omega dataset. This gave players access to the Regent dashboard, revealing the big secret. It's a live map that tracks any user you want in any given area. It includes data on their blood type, their emotional state, their weekly activity and daily schedule, and if they're alone. It also includes an option to track the target and force match target. The reason behind some of these stranger details here is coming, but for the moment, remember what the Regent biometric scan was designed to do and how well we see it working. During all this, our friend Knox on Twitter ran into some trouble, tweeting out on March 1st that he'd been drugged. He disappeared until March 21st, the day of the event in San Francisco, and had very much changed his tune about Tender and Trust No More, singing the company's praises while calling Trust No More a load of wackos. March 16th kicked off the grand plan of action for Trust No More participants, as players were instructed to email members of the site to join groups for Operation Pegasus, the counter-offense at the Tender launch party. Players helped the team search stolen emails from Tender to find out where a spare remote would be held for Malcolm Chandler's presentation. They also needed to gather info on 2 special guests Malcolm invited using social media. Finally, home players could help Manchuria prepare her route to the stage by getting an online map of the building. The day of the event, the field team got into position, which had at least 3 people flown out by Tender on special selection. They received a contact from a Trust No More agent telling them to check out suspicious activity near a trash can on the side of the building, take photos, and meet a Tender employee on their team. The trash can held bloody syringes and cotton balls, a hint of the reveal to come later that night. The team then met with their Tender plan and were ushered in through a secret entrance after being given Operation Pegasus uniforms. While mixing with the crowd, they also took a moment to grab the spare remote located by online players, which was given to the real Manchuria, aka the real Angela. And at last, everything came to a head in a live-stream broadcast of the Tender event, giving those in the building and players online equal opportunity to watch the finale. Before we roll the footage, I'd like to thank the supplier of this recording, Game Detectives, who got on board with the Tender ARG very early and recorded each phase. Their reporting on the Tender experience through the Game Detectives Wiki has been extremely valuable for making this comprehensive video, and their work during the game enabled a successful campaign while providing a great ride for anybody who missed it live. Plenty of ARGs are designed to make sure the end goal occurs no matter what, but there are always factors of player interaction that are depended on to see the full vision come to life. Game Detectives and the Tender player base pulled it off. Congratulations and thanks are in order. If anyone out there wants to join events like this in the future, you may just want to consider joining the Game Detectives. And now, for the fruits of their labor, the Tender ARG finale.
Double, double, toil and trouble, fire, burn, and cauldron bubble. A provocative image. Witches bent over a cauldron, adding ingredients to their bubbling, swirling brew. Ladies and gentlemen, in the common vernacular, an emotional connection is often referred to as chemistry. I myself prefer the term alchemy, a marriage of science and art. And so I give you Tender, the science of emotion. Tonight, we are going to reinvent social media. How will we do that? Well, let's look at what others have done. Social media has revolutionized the world. However, there is one thing it gets consistently wrong. You. Social websites, dating websites, they can't properly convey you. Profiles, questionnaires, they're dull, clumsy tools to communicate the totality that is you. Don't you get tired of putting your inner essence in blocks of text? Don't you want something more innovative? Something more intuitive? We at Tender want to master the alchemy of emotion. We want you to be able to share what's bubbling in your cauldron. We want you to be able to share the texture of your personality, the taste. To that end, we have combined bleeding-edge technologies and superior formulas. It's a system unlike anything that social media has done before. A system I am very eager to share with you. A system I can assure you we have patented the hell out of. But connection is not a spectator sport. That is why you here tonight and you out there online will help vote on key features of Tender. You will vote to direct the very future of Tender. Well, where are my manners? Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Malcolm Chandler, and I invite you to join me in reinventing social media. All right, let's have a look at some of the new features coming out to Tender. A lot of exciting features I'm very excited to show you. All right. Apologies. Even though we're trying to bring social media into the future, apparently live tech glitches are a part of all possible futures.
What's the matter, Malcolm? Lost control?
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce a last-minute special treat. The co-founder of Tender and the genius behind all of its tech, Angela Carney. Angela, you're looking so much better, so much more rested.
Something dangerous and predatory is lurking behind the Tender app. I know. I helped create it. Tender uses algorithms to manipulate you. Okay, they use procedural emotional generation and operant conditioning in ways I never intended. They create dependency. They program your emotional responses in insidious ways. That man, Malcolm Chandler, he's got his hands in a lot of crazy shit, okay? He calls it Project Chimera. It's a bunch of organizations, corporations, and other interests linked together, only the individual parts are not aware of the whole. Only Malcolm knows Chimera's agenda. It even has connections going all the way back to the CIA's MKUltra mind control experiments. It's not just me. Other people, tenacious people, are helping me to investigate. We are Legion. We are a network. And we have uncovered the terrifying truth that lies behind Tender, Project Chimera, and Malcolm Chandler. They're out there now, Malcolm. They're working as we speak. And we have come across all the proof that we need, and we are ready to take this to the whole world.
Apologies. Apologies, ladies and gentlemen. I had hoped to not have to do this out of respect for Angela. You see, Angela was a co-founder of Tender, but she had to leave because of mental health illnesses. We wished her well, but a conspiracy theory website took advantage of her vulnerabilities. That's where you post your stories, isn't it, Angela? TrustNoMore.com? The editor-in-chief has a criminal record, and their most recent stories were animal-human hybrid and a motel carpet that murders its guests.
No, you cannot twist this around. No. We know too much. We have uncovered too much. We've seen too much. We know about your interrogation room over there. That's not just some quirky party exhibit. Okay, you are manipulating people in there. You are testing them. You're reprogramming their emotional responses. You are part of an insidious program, and the CIA is backing this all up, and this building has seen a lot of nasty history. Bad things have happened here, okay? A lot of spilt blood. People have vanished here. I happen to know them. They have helped me, and I can't find them. But one thing I know is the last place they ended up was here. You can't cover this all up, Malcolm. You can't make this all go away. You can't erase the stains of all the evil that you have done. Not if it is shown under the right light. Look at this. All this blood. All this blood, Malcolm. This is your party. This is your slaughterhouse. This is Tender. Aren't you going to say something? Aren't you going to say something, you smug son of a bitch? Say something.
I hardly have any need to. Ladies and gentlemen, cattle and kine, Angela is correct, though she hardly fathoms the depths. My kindred and I desire an innovative way to flavor your essence, as well as a way to condition the bovine masses to be even more oblivious to predators. Angela's work helped brilliantly. It paired nicely with my own techniques of erasing short-term memory. The live stream has been cut off. No one here will remember. And Angela... What? What are you doing? I can control this. I am in control. Tender is the future. I am the future.
What a mess.
Someone's going to have to clean this up.
And then, of course, the world premiere of the trailer for Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 played to an audibly stunned and very excited crowd. So, what happened at the party? Who were those people that took out Malcolm, and what was he talking about describing the room as bovine masses and cattle? Let's begin with an epilogue article written on the Trust No More site, Tender, The Aftermath. This is certainly our darkest day here at TNM. We've lost one of our own. As your humbled editor, I cop to the responsibility of it and the responsibility of finding her, or at least making her story heard. Her name is Angela Carney. You know her as Manchuria. Angela was the co-founder of Tender, ousted by a conspiracy led by Malcolm Chandler, a conspiracy to turn her breakthrough algorithms to a predatory purpose. On March 21st, Angela confronted Malcolm and the world at Tender's launch party at the Folsom Street Foundry in San Francisco. Something terrible happened there. Angela stormed the stage, interrupting Chandler's live presentation, and then the livestream cut out. The media already seems to be forgetting the event. A great shadow swallowed it all up. There is much we don't know. Let's start with what we do know. A crowd of partiers suffered mass memory loss and possible hallucination. A gas leak was reported, but that flimsy excuse seems to cover something much more purposeful and sinister. Drained blood bags were found at the scene. We have photographic proof. What happened at this event that required human blood? San Francisco Today covered the story the following morning and were abysmally predictable in their reporting. We have reason to believe they are controlled by those who wish to keep this silent and who wish to secretly communicate with one another. Look at that day's horoscope. What does the code word nightingale mean in conjunction with the lucky numbers? Something is being communicated. And what of Angela? The above-mentioned newspaper claims she was taken to an as-yet undeclared mental hospital. We checked with Langley Porter Psychiatric Hospital, Community Behavioral Health Services, and dozens of other area mental hospitals. None of them have an Angela Carney registered there. According to San Francisco Today, an eyewitness identified as Joshua Deach claimed to have seen Angela wheeled away in a stretcher at the Folsom Street Foundry on the night in question. We tracked Deach down at his home in North Carolina. He recanted his story, saying, "I was mistaken. Don't know what I saw." He slammed the door shut, refusing any further communication. Dozens of crucifixes stood near his house and on his roof. The windows were draped in rose thorns. Dozens of odd piles of seeds and buttons marked the yard, and everything stank of garlic. What does this all mean? It adds up to an obvious word, a word I am afraid to even type because I believe the dubious reputation of our website has already endangered Angela. I won't type that word, but you should know it. It's probably itching at the end of your tongue. You want to say it. It's a word that would give shape to every vague conspiracy, every lurking figure on a grassy knoll, and shadow state that seeks to control us. They desire our silence, our obeisance, and our blood. The word they dare not say is, of course, vampire. And with the news finally out regarding Bloodlines 2, we can find answers to some questions about the ARG and official media and interviews with the head writer, Brian Mitsoda. This interview quote from Polygon answers a lot right away. When Bloodlines 2 begins, players will take on the role of a newly created vampire slowly gaining power alongside of an awareness of their new role in society. The source of that power is human blood, and fighting hosts is a major gameplay mechanic. But not just any blood will do. In our game, vampires are looking for something called resonance, Mitsoda says. That means very strong emotional feelings in human beings. Vampires don't really feel strong emotions, so in order to experience an emotion such as rage or desire, they have to get it out of people who have these very strong emotions already in their blood. And that's why Tender was hijacked by Malcolm Chandler. Its emotion tracking algorithm not only gave vampires information about lonely people, their blood type, location, and schedule, it let them know their emotional state. Feel like tasting ambition tonight? How about comfort? Pull up Tender, find a victim, and sink your teeth in. We even have info from the Bloodlines site that gives us insight into the vampire world Chandler and his brood came from. In World of Darkness, vampires are a race made up of various clans, and those who live in modern society go by a code of survival known as the Masquerade, a set of rules that keep up the facade that vampires don't exist. In Bloodlines 2, there will be 6 clans, and one of them, the Ventru, seem to be exactly the kind of people who would have created Tender. Historically, Seattle has been the site of many industrial booms, and of course, the Ventru have been there to capitalize on its fortunes. As more and more billion-dollar corporations shape the local and global landscape, enterprising Ventrue have entrenched themselves in the businesses of the 21st century, paving the way for a prosperous future for their clan, and making enemies of the residents who preferred the way things used to be. This image of a Ventrue member on the left immediately brings Malcolm Chandler to mind, and we can guess who the vampires that took him out at the end were too. Elder Ventrue, those behind the Fraser Foundation, who needed to execute one of their own for breaking the Masquerade and failing to carry out their plans without human interference. We even gain evidence of a Ventrue power at work on Angela, Mesmerize. The primary Dominate power allows the Ventrue to place one NPC in a brief hypnotic trance. The person so affected is oblivious to the world around them, ignoring sound, touch, and even pain. Now, here's a fun question. Is Tender going to show up in the actual game? It just might. On the Bloodlines 2 website, you can create a Paradox account that tracks a form of minigame, finding blood packs to award you with blood points. The first unlockable is a Tender t-shirt, and the second a Tender bodyguard outfit, which I'm guessing will be provided in-game for your character. And now, when you play, you'll know the deep lore on Tender before anyone else even learns about it. Pretty cool, right? In fact, when you look at the whole span of the Tender ARG, the whole method of integration with the mainline game is cool. Stand back for a moment and examine how it all unfolded, from the starting phases and progression challenges to the ending. It legitimately feels like a questline from a modern RPG played out in life, complete with a major consequence cutscene at the end as a result of your efforts. Speaking of fun moments of integration, do you remember the oddly specific name from that final Trust No More article, Joshua Deitch? It just so happens to be the name of the writer for the Tender experience. And due to an awesome acquaintance of mine who's had the pleasure of working with him, I was able to contact Joshua and get a lot more answers about his time with Tender than Trust No More ever will. I'd like to thank Joshua once more before rolling on to our email interview for taking the time to speak with me about his experience and for his work on Tender. Our Q&A goes as follows. Let's begin with some background I'm sure plenty are curious to know. What kind of work have you done as a creative professional that granted an opportunity to be on a project like this? And how long have you been doing that sort of work? It's pretty difficult for anyone to easily come up with any idea of a resume that lands you a spot on the team for a professional ARG after all. Joshua had this to say. I imagine there are many odd paths that lead to an ARG professional, as making one encompasses so many different disciplines. My odd path winds its way through writing fiction, video games, and tabletop games. In 2005, towards the end of my grad school studies, White Wolf Publishing held a novel contest, challenging contestants to write a story set in their World of Darkness tabletop game setting. I submitted a pitch and eventually won that contest, getting my novel Strangeness in the Proportion published. Over the years, that's led to some freelance writing gigs with White Wolf and Onyx Path Publishing, writing in their Vampire the Masquerade and Vampire the Requiem games. After grad school, I had a shiny degree, but still found myself living with my parents, working graveyard shift at 7-Eleven and not quite managing my student loan payments. Video game companies can afford full-time writers, I thought to myself. I made a prioritized list of every video game company I could find online. Over the next few months, I submitted dozens and dozens of resumes and cover letters. Mostly, I didn't hear back. Sometimes I received a no. But the great thing about job rejections is that a single yes cancels out 1,000 no's. In 2009, a video game company called Funcom took a chance on me. I moved to Norway to work at their office there. I've been writing for video games ever since, nearly 10 years now. Some of those games include Age of Conan, The Secret World, Conan Exiles, and a small amount of writing on Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Incidentally, submitting job applications outside of my country, the USA, had an unexpected advantage. American companies were more interested in my experience, which wasn't much, than my education. However, countries hiring foreign workers need to get you a work visa, and education is easier to document than experience. My writing master's degree helped make my visa process easy, and thus was a point in my favor on my resume in Norway. Question 2. We know the public rollout of the Tender ARG began in January of this year, but when were you contacted by Alison Smith and how long were you working on the ARG before the January launch? I imagine something like this was a lot of concentrated work in at least a few months' time. For context, Alison Smith are the company that officially ran the Tender ARG on behalf of Paradox Interactive. Joshua said, I was contacted by Alison Smith in November of 2018. The mandate of secrecy from Paradox/White Wolf was strong, so Alison Smith played their cards very close to their chest, so much so that in the first interview, they didn't tell me who the client was and even pretended their interest in me was from my work on The Secret World. In a later meeting, and after I signed an NDA, they revealed that it was my writing for the World of Darkness that brought them to me. I was already interested in working on an ARG. Finding out what the subject matter was made me giddy. I worked regularly on Project Tender starting in December and wrote through the final live event in March. The work was certainly very concentrated. Being a game that reacted to the input of its online players, often we had to pivot things and produce material very fast. This was my first ARG to write for, and I'd certainly enjoy working on more. ARGs and immersive online storytelling efforts for major titles can get rather involved and extensive, but Tender is quite a complex beast with a bunch of phases that required code breaking, messages, and cross-website movements. What kind of writing were you doing for the project and how extensive was your work? I imagine it could have involved anything from crafting the expression of the Tender site to the dialogue during the live event reveal. Basically, when we look at this whole big beast of an experience, which parts were your crafting? ARGs are deep, dark rabbit holes full of wonderful things. Project Tender was definitely a big beast. Lots of appendages, tentacles, mouths, eyes. So big that even for someone working directly on it, I was not always fully aware of every part of its enormity. But that was part of the excitement of working on the project. My early involvement was a series of meetings where Alison Smith showed me their existing material and presentations given to Paradox. I gave some opinions on certain details, but the broad brushstrokes were already there, and wonderful. I helped write the pitch for the influencers that were to be approached for the ARG. I also edited and adjusted some of the narrative pitches. I wrote a series of character write-ups for the major figures in the plot. I worked on the background lore, particularly how the vampires fit into it and what they were doing to manipulate behind the scenes. From there, I concentrated on writing a series of conspiracy theory-style stories for the Trust No More website. I spent a bit of time on real-world conspiracy websites. I toured the internet, sampling creepypasta and urban legends of the internet age, and a few Nightmind videos, come to think of it, all to give the conspiracy articles the right World of Darkness flavor. Other members of the Alison Smith team took over and filled in some of the articles after that. I started up and wrote the first several tweets by our fictional influencer Nox before handing that off to Alison Smith. Most of the second half of my involvement was concentrated on the final live event. I worked with that team to come up with pitches for on-site quests, wrote the text needed for those, as well as scripts and descriptions of the cast of characters that populated it. I also did a lot of last-minute editing, looking over bits and bobs that the team wrote up before it went out to the players. I wrote quite a lot of in-game artifacts, letters, memos, and such. A large part of my work on the project was making sure the elements fit the lore of Vampire the Masquerade and the World of Darkness. So I suppose, Joshua, that we have you to thank for Grandma's pancake recipe. That was a nice touch. Trying to run an ARG for a major media release, like a video game, certainly involves picking and choosing which elements of story and world build you can incorporate and how to tackle translating themes, ideas, and components of the final product that people will eventually get, all without spoiling what's to come. What went into developing your plan of action and informing your writing for a Bloodlines game that had to play its true identity so close to the vest? The key was teasing out the right amount of information while confirming as little as possible. Even when players cleverly suspect what things are leading towards, that lack of confirmation makes for a delightful tension. The big advantage of working with this IP is that this level of secrecy is built right into the DNA of the lore. The Masquerade is the elaborate system of ruses and shadowy conspiracies designed to keep the mortals from knowing. For humans in the setting, even when they see something strange, it's only the tip of the iceberg. They often are not privy to all of the horrible contexts. The characters interacting with the players are mostly those sorts of people, so in writing I tried to take on that myopic viewpoint when looking at the World of Darkness. The setting is very atmospheric and cool even before you flash the fangs. Yes, the old woman encountered a Nosferatu vampire using its undead powers to cloak its appearance, but all that comes out in the police report is that they had 3 separate sketch artist sessions and each sketch looked completely different, with the witness breaking down into sobs at the end. A fun bit of weird, but not obviously vampire fiction when looked at through that little lens. I found all these sorts of themes run through the filter of a dating website and all the contemporary horrors to be quite delicious. I found it helped to focus on those things and leave the vampire waiting in the wings. There was a lot to chew on before the reveal. Online dating anxieties, conspiracies, governments or corporations influencing you, online algorithms programming you, Skinnerbox horror, etc. If there's one thing most creators can agree on, it's that we all have ideas that come up during the process we just didn't get the chance to do or we did not have the means to make work with the whole plan. Are there any concepts or angles for the Tender experience you had in mind that didn't make it to the final draft? I believe there were a number of my Trust No More articles that didn't make it up on the site. I might have to go see if I can get the okay to post those. I think some of them were nice World of Darkness vignettes. Also, there were some quests and plots I pitched for the final live event that didn't quite make it in. They would have made fine story elements in another medium, but would have been lost in the shuffle and the non-linear narrative of a live-action event. I'd compare it to live theater makeup. The lines and colors are more pronounced. They'd look gaudy and obvious close up, but are just perfect from the stage. Subtle movie makeup would get lost in the distance and glare of the stage lights. Similarly, you don't have ultimate control of information flow and audience involvement at a live role-playing style event like Tender's launch party. People are distracted and partying, and not all of them have been down the deep rabbit hole of the plot. You adjust the depth of the quest and the flow of narrative accordingly. Are there any aspects of the day-to-day life and process working on something like this you'd like to share? We all know the experience of going through a game or story or witnessing its tale upon completion, but to be on board designing it and getting ready for rollout is a journey not many get to undertake. These days, I live in North Carolina, Alison Smith is in Montreal, and Paradox is in Sweden, so day-to-day input with the team was done through Google Messenger and video meetings. My prep was reading up on the latest 5th edition of Vampire. As part of my process, I like to immerse myself in related material, both for researching details and soaking up the mood. That might be surfing conspiracy websites or watching Steve Jobs' keynote presentations in preparation for Malcolm Chandler's final presentation at the Tender launch party. The day-to-day of working on an ARG was ridiculous fun. The turnaround time could involve some late nights, but very quick gratification with seeing the effects of your work on the players at large. What's really cool about ARG work is that while I'm writing this text, I'm sitting on the back of this very elaborate mystery machine. Alice and Smith have a fantastic team of people who make puzzles, quests, and an utter labyrinth of an experience. They're good at overlooking the big picture, which leaves me to do what I'm particularly good at, putting the detailed flesh onto a good skeleton. I'm in my home office writing, and meanwhile there are clandestine things happening on the internet and in the real world. Wicked fun. Thanks again to Joshua for this excellent insight and taking the time to fill us in on the experience writing for Tender. You can find him at joshuadeach.com, where his blog and writing credits are available. He's active on Twitter and seems to be as nocturnal as I am, and he'll soon be starting his Patreon back up, where you can find short weird fiction and audio pieces. As for Bloodlines 2, current news has its launch date as Q1 of 2020 for PC, Xbox One, and PS4, so we can look to January through March of next year for release. The best way to keep up on the official date would be to follow the Twitter account at VTM_Bloodlines. I hope you've enjoyed this nocturnal journey with me into the latest professional ARG that mystified audiences and led to something spectacular, as well as the awesome insight from writer Joshua Deach. If you've enjoyed the video and care to see more breakdowns of ARGs, web series, and immersive internet stories, subscribe to Nightmind now. Hit the bell icon to be notified whenever a new video drops, and hit that like button if you're feeling kinda thirsty for some blood right now. I could use at least a Shirley Temple or something. I have been talking for a while. Major thanks to all of you for watching, and to my supporters on Patreon, who are my kindred. Stick around to see the names of all of these excellent creatures of the night. Thanks for joining me in the dark again this evening. Once more, I'm Nick Nocturne, and like yet another social media service that's trying to harvest and sell your information to vampires, I'll be back again real soon. Sleep tight.